What is journaling and how can it be beneficial to autistic people? Well, that is what we're going to find out. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Aspergian Journal. Journaling is a meditational practice of processing and writing down your thoughts, feelings, experiences and reflections you have had during the course of the day or week that's gone by. And it can be a very powerful tool for self-discovery, stress management, personal growth and emotional processing. This can also apply to autistic people, as well as being a flexible outlet for their creativity, self-reflection, building their ability to communicate with others, as well as processing their emotions better, as this is a very key area that autistic people do struggle with. Before we can answer the question of how journaling can be beneficial for autistic people, firstly, let's explore a brief history of journaling and how is it very effective when it comes to the health and well-being of neurotypical people as well as autistic people. The concept of journaling has existed for thousands of years, dating back to the ancient civilizations of the Egyptians, Greeks and Chinese, who would write the daily events, dreams and thoughts they had experienced as part of their philosophical and spiritual practices. Monks and scholars during the medieval times would keep journals as acts of devotion for their associations with certain religions and also as scientific observations of their thoughts and feelings as part of conducting mindfulness exercises. As the world moved forward from the medieval times through many different eras, and as it entered the 20th century, journaling became a paramount and therapeutic component of people's health and well-being, which is evidenced by various philosophers like Sigmund Freud with his psychoanalysis theory during the early 1900s, and Dr. R. Progoff for his development of the intensive journaling method in 1966, to the modern alliterations of exposure therapies like cognitive behavioural therapy, also known as CBT, which is more well known nowadays. Where our ancestors used scrolls and parchment paper and had to journal their thoughts and feelings and insights and at using sharpened feathers and ink like they do in the Harry Potter books, nowadays we use more electronic devices like tablets, smartphones, laptops, Kindles, and using various different apps within those devices where you can write down or type what your thoughts and feelings are, as well as using traditional notepads and ballpoint pens as to conduct our journaling exercises. Various studies over the years have shown that journaling does have a positive impact on a person's overall health and well-being, and they do see a reduction in their anxiety levels and increased mental state of mind. One study conducted in 2005 showed that expressive writing helps to improve one's moods, reduces stress, and improving their immune functionings and their psychological well-being. And it also found that those who journaled just 15 to 20 minutes a day and over the course of 4 weeks had found that there was a 34% improvement in their overall mental health. In relation to autism, a study conducted in 2021 that found that autistic teenagers who kept and wrote structured journals and had found to have had better self-regulation when it comes to their emotions, have a lower sense of social anxiety, and when combining their journaling and with CBT autism-friendly interventions, also helped to not only identify the triggers for their anxiety, but also when combining that with coping strategies like mindfulness and other techniques, also helped massively in their efforts of reducing the severity of their anxiety over time. As an autistic person, I initially thought that the idea of journaling was a waste of time, and I had to overcome a lot of biased stances and closed mindset that I had at that time to explore the idea more and actually start the habit of writing in a journal. Most of that perception was mainly down to me being quite a naive and anxious autistic child that had to face many adversities and challenges growing up, and those memories and that just develops this, develops this negative and closed off mindset, which was just keeping me trapped in that cycle, and it wasn't just getting me anywhere. And it got to a point where in my mental health and anxiety so bad, and suffering with depression, that you just left with no other option, and just really, you have to explore, different ways of coping, and you get to a point where you think, well, I've got nothing to lose, so I may as well give it a try. You don't know how well you might get better at something unless you try it, and you never know where it'll take you. Starting journaling for the first time and developing it into a habit and a routine was not an easy journey to take or master, and even to this day, I have to remind myself that I can't take my health and well-being for granted, and it has to form a major part of my day-to-day routine and life in general. And because if I want to become a better person, I have to self-reflect a lot more about what's going on in my mind at any given time, but also by looking back at what you've written, and as you progress in that routine, you can look back and think how far you've come. And so when you have those moments of comparing your journey to someone else's, which I'm guilty of myself, and you can reflect on how far you've come, and ground yourself in saying that you are enough, and no one can share the same story that you've got, because we're all unique with our unique set of circumstances likes and dislikes, and how we are as individuals in terms of our mannerisms and what makes us the human being that we are. No, there's no other person that can be out there that can be 100% the same as you. Even though we can have similarities and that from one person to another, and that is even more strongly prevalent, and that even amongst the autistic community, even though we might be very similar in terms of we are on the autistic spectrum, and and many aspects or characteristics of being autistic, and that can be shared. But ultimately, we are just unique in ourselves, and the whole point of building this community really is to respect one another for who we are and support one another in our not only our highs but also lows in life. One of the biggest sources of inspiration for starting journaling myself was when I started watching a lot of YouTube channels and other platforms where there'd be podcasters or YouTubers and who would talk about their unique journeys of wellness and personal development, and how anxiety has played a very integral role of their journeys, and they also mention about how purposeful and having a minimalist standard of living can also help them improve their lives and live them with intentions, and making sure that each decision that they make and that makes a positive difference to their lives and does not hinder them or hold them back in any way towards the goals and dreams that they want to achieve or the lifestyle that they want to live. Now we have explored a bit of a brief history of journaling and how effective it is, what are the benefits of journaling for autistic people? Now, I have mentioned a few of these maybe already up to this point, but I've made up a little bit of a small list of what I think and that journaling can really help for autistic people. Number one is emotional regulation. Autistic people are quite well renowned and that for writing and articulating their thoughts and feelings on paper rather than speaking them to other people, and as it can help and support them with their basically processing their emotions a lot better, and it is something in that the autistic people do struggle with, myself included. That's not to say that autistic people do not want to express their emotions and feelings towards others, because they want to, but they just struggle to find the right kind of people that they trust and those that are close and that they can rely on. And it's just being able to have that safe environment and the right kind of people within it to be able to express their emotions more confidently. Number two, improved self-awareness. Journaling can help autistic people with developing a better understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, for which they can give praise for, and that because these are things and that they've got confidence in, but also in areas that they need to work on so they can become better at it, like navigating social interactions more better, or overcoming certain environments or situations that causes them to have anxiety. It can also be used to build basically a visual record of identifying what are the potential triggers and patterns and growth over time of of what influences their anxiety levels to spike up or down, and to also give encouragement of self-reflection on their strengths and interests, but also their sensory preferences of what can they manage and what things that they can't manage with. So it helps them navigate in a world that wasn't really built for neurodiverse people like those that are on the autistic spectrum, to be able to navigate that neurotypical world in a more safer and controlled manner. Now, you can't always predict what the world has in store for you, and sometimes you have to navigate certain things that you just can't avoid. And that's one of the biggest things that the Aspergian Journal is about, is to talk about various topics and situations that autistic people will come across or be part of that they just can't avoid. You're gonna have to build enough inner strength and overcome your anxiety to a certain degree to be able to manage those situations better, but never forget who you are as a human being, and always be your own self-advocate, and that for your own autism, and never change yourself entirely for other people's benefit. It has to benefit you and you foremost. Number 3, enhanced communication skills. Communication skills and socialisation, to be included, can be a hurdle for autistic people to overcome, and building their abilities to develop and manage friendships with others. And this is where journaling can also play an integral part in not only identifying areas for improvement, but also it can be a record of how you progress in terms of your development in these areas. So if, let's say, you struggle with going on public transport and you're really anxious about going on the bus, but you need to be able to use public transport and that to get yourself around in your local town or city or wherever you live, and you maybe don't drive. It's those situations that, it's something that you can't avoid. You have to be able to get around, and like if you have to go shopping or do other things, if you can't drive, it takes away that little bit of freedom of being able to get around. But if you have to use public transport and have to get around, it's one of those situations where you can ease yourself into that situation over one step after another, and use journaling to keep track of your progress. So you could have a scale of like 1 to 10 of how well did that experience feel like to you. So like number 1 could be very bad and number 10 can be very good. And what you do as you put yourself in those situations that cause you anxiety, over time you should start to see a reduction of how anxious you feel in that situation, and the ultimate goal would be is to not be anxious at all of using public transport, or you could use that process and that for any other things in life that cause you anxiety, but it holds you back and it's something that you can't avoid, like going to a dentist appointment, doctors, or something like that. Not many people like going to the dentist, and that, myself included, I don't particularly like going. but it's something I have to do for my own, to keep my oral hygiene in check, and it's important, and I have to do it. You know, you can't avoid it. It's just something you have to do. Verbally communicating with others, and that can be overwhelming or limiting for some autistic people, which makes, you know, written expression, like in written format, and that more natural and effective for them to do. And it can also provide them an outlet to express their thoughts and feelings more effectively if expressing them verbally is a difficulty. The biggest thing for me when it comes to communicating my thoughts and feelings is sometimes it's not the case that I can't do it verbally or written or in written format. It's sometimes it's having the right kind of people around you to be able to express how you feel in a safe and compassionate manner from the other person. You know, and sometimes that can lead to your anxiety going into overdrive, but it's just something that can be problematic. But just by journaling, you're lightening the load and now it's in your mind, because the more you leave it in your mind and it's not expressed, you know, in a certain way, verbally or written, it just builds itself up to a point where it's like the kettle, when it gets to boiling point and it spills over, sometimes it's harder to control, rather than if you just self-regulate your emotional state as every day goes by, just by journaling or expressing your thoughts to someone that's close to you. You know, the better you'll become at managing your emotions more effectively. Journaling can also support executive functioning. Executive functioning can range from like planning and organisational skills to productivity and time management. And this is something that autistic people can struggle with if they haven't had the right training in these areas or the opportunities to develop these skills, and that organically. Journaling can help autistic people with managing and prioritising tasks, setting deadlines and that for work or personal projects, and provide a visual structure of what they are wanting when they build routines, and ensuring that it can actually help with the productivity of when an autistic person is doing tasks or going through their day-to-day routines. And that is something that autistic people do thrive on, and it gives them that reassurance, and that when they have moments of anxiety and distress. It can also help and act with creative expression and development. Autistic people are quite renowned for being very creative and have the abilities to develop rich and imaginative inner worlds that can be expressed in various types of work, but they often struggle at times with sharing these insights with other people out of fear of social pressure, misunderstanding, and also rejection. When you journal, it provides a non-judgmental outlet for autistic people to explore their creative ideas, dreams, beliefs and visions, as well as accepting and expressing their neurodivergent identity on their own terms. Lastly, and I think really I've covered this quite well to this point, but also to be a therapeutic and reflective tool. You know, journaling, if it's combined with like mindfulness or like CBT, it's very helpful in managing your thoughts and feelings in a safe and compassionate way, but it also can be a very vital element of therapy, of being able to not only question your anxious thoughts and feelings, but also how do I change those with something more positive, and be able to keep a record of how I've exposed myself to anxious situations and how did I manage them effectively. And as you have a record, and the more times you expose yourself to that anxiety, and as it diminishes over time, and when you have a visual record, you'll start to see the reduction of your anxiety when you're exposed to those situations. And it's also a very good reflective tool in terms of tracking your progress and be proud of the progress you've made. And always remember that your journey is unique and no one else and that has the same journey as you, despite maybe having similarities in their own situations. So don't take for granted and at the progress you can make if you have the right mindset, determination, and the tools and strategies in place to be able to tackle the issues you have head on, and become a better person for it, and have a better state of living, and that works for you and only you. What tips or recommendations do I give to those who want to start journaling or nurture their current habit further, and to help them with their day-to-day life and also setting long-term goals? Well, I've thought of 3 recommendations, and I think that might help you and to get you on that journey towards becoming more better with journaling and becoming a more effective writer as a result of it. Number 1, buy yourself a good hardback book. Now, this might sound obvious because obviously you're going to need a book or a notepad to start journaling on. But you'll be very surprised on how many people just write their thoughts and feelings on odd bits of paper and just leave them about all over the house and have no organisation of keeping it all in one place. Now, for me, if I did that kind of thing, and there'd be I wouldn't have this consistent routine of journaling and be able to keep track of my progress. It'd be all over the place. And the benefits that I've outlined, of what journaling brings, you would not experience that, reduction in anxiety and better psychological well-being. And if you don't have that set routine and have a safe place and of writing your thoughts and feelings down, and so you don't, and that's personal to you, and to be able to overcome the things that causes you anxiety or the state of mind that you're currently in that you want to change. Always remember that journaling is not just about a routine of just writing your thoughts and feelings down, but it's also an investment in yourself. As the old saying goes, the biggest investment and that has the biggest return that you can make in your life is yourself. The skills and the skills that you develop as a person, and that will always have the biggest return. So never take it for granted. If you exercise the right determination, resilience and discipline, and act towards something that you want to achieve or develop in, and then you will see the results. You'll see a big improvement in a short space of time, or whatever time frame that you set yourself to learn that skill. Now, when it comes to choosing a particular book to write in, you can choose whichever suits you. But I'd always recommend that you buy like an A5 or an A4 size book, hardback and that preferably, to get you started on your journaling path. For me, for example, I bought myself one of these, and it's an A4 size hardback, like leather covered book, and I write in this at least multiple times a week, and to be able to track the progress I'm making, and always reflect on how far I've come in return. And I found it's really helpful. Now, I know an A4 size might be a bit too big, so maybe an A5 might be more suitable. But if you get like a little A7 size little book and that to do it in, and it's not big enough and that to be able to write down everything that you want to write. And it's like you need a magnifying glass just to look at it. As I've said before, building this routine, it takes a lot of time and consistency, and that to really, before you can see the benefits of what journaling can bring. So it's really important to have a routine that works for you. And whatever you write in your journal, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like finished. Like you're not writing an academic journal. You can write whatever you want, and it doesn't have to make sense to other people. As long as it works for you and you can process that information from mind to paper, that's all that matters. One of the first exercises that I did when I first got that book was I started writing my life story from a very young age, as far back as I can remember, right up to the present day. So and I still add to it as time goes on. So it gives me a nice reflection of my life's journey, and so it helps me ground myself at those points where I start to compare myself to others, which I can be guilty of, and to ground, to remind myself that, look, I am who I am as for the journey that I've had up to this present day, and I should be very proud of the achievements that I've made so far, and it also serves as the foundation for where I want to go moving forward. Number 2, create an autistic friendly environment that encourages journaling. Now, I know that a lot of people might not be able to find this safe environment, and that depending on what your circumstances are. But if you do have a friendly environment where it gives you that calm and peace of state of mind, and that gives you the ability to journal your thoughts and feelings without disruptions or judgments from other people, it really helps and to cultivate that routine and that sense of being able to write whatever you feel down without other people dictating on what you can and what you can't write, or it stops you in the process of how you flow into your routine and life. I know that everyday things like families, jobs, careers, and household duties, they do take up maybe a big chunk of your time, but never neglect your health and well-being. And journaling, it plays a very integral part in keeping your mental health in check. And that is very important for an autistic person to be mindful of and at all times, because autistic people do struggle with anxiety and mental health more predominantly and now than what neurotypical people can. And so it's important that you have the right apparatus in place to tackle moments of high anxiety and to cultivate this routine and coping strategy of managing your anxiety more effectively. And as you do it over time, you should start to see your anxiety dissipating and diminishing in its severity. Also, if you have the right and safe space and that encourages self-reflection and creativity, it'll also help you focus your mind on fulfilling work, like the kind of things that brings you fulfillment and joy. So like for me, when I do my newsletters on Substack for the Aspergian Journal, and I always like to be in an environment and have the right kind of setting that encourages me to write. And I do not like having lots of disruptions and that that puts me off kilter with my work and the process of me doing my work. So one of the big things I might do is like have some background music and that puts you in that state of mind to focus on what you're doing in the here and now, and forget about thoughts and feelings and that might put you off track with what you're supposed to be focusing on in the here and at that present moment in time. And also it gets rid of it just blocks out all those thoughts and that causes you distress. But there's a time and place and that to explore those when it comes to like doing a mindfulness exercise where you encourage the thought to come into your mind and let it leave the room, so to speak, on its own and not interact with it. I mean, that's part of the CBT again, just for and as you do that practice more and more, you won't become as much anxious when it comes to those intrusive thoughts. Number 3, develop a journaling strategy that works for you and you only. When it comes to developing a journaling strategy, it's very important that it works for you and it meets the needs and expectations you are wanting to gain from those journaling exercises. Always remember, autistic people are unique, and what works for one person might be different to another. What might work for me might not necessarily work for you. There always will be similarities between what methods autistic people use to help with their journaling routine, especially surrounding anxiety and mental health, because we all have to deal with anxiety at various points in our lives, and in many cases it can be an ongoing day-to-day situation that autistic person has to deal with and has to overcome at some point in their life and cultivate more healthier and constructive habits and that brings them joy and fulfillment rather than anxiety and distress. When I conduct my journaling, like writing in my book, I will like sit in my own like little living room. Well, I call it a man cave. Every man has to have a man cave, right? And I play some like meditation music in the background, and I don't let anything, I don't have anything else there, and then just, open me grey leather book, and just start writing my thoughts and feelings about the day and week that I've had, or jot down any fabulous ideas that I've had come to mind, so I can reflect or refer back to them at a later date. It is amazing on how many ideas can come to your mind, like when you're not consciously thinking of them, or like at certain times of the day, like before going to bed, or when you're in the shower, or having a walk in nature. Sometimes, and that, depending on the time of year, like in the winter, I will like I have a weighted blanket, and that helps autistic people with anxiety. But in the winter, by God, it does keep you warm, and that in the cold months. And I'll make myself like a hot drink, before starting my journaling exercise. And sometimes creating that environment, working with what you've got, and that can help you to put yourself in that mindset of opening a book and just basically writing your heart and soul out on paper, and ensure that there's no disruptions in that when you are in that process of writing. Mind you, after a while, when I'm sitting in that weighted blanket and I've done quite a bit of my journaling, sometimes it makes me end up falling asleep in my chair, and I have to get up and go to bed. So it's funny how, by God, it does keep you warm. But I tell you, but in the summer, it'd make you feel quite hot under that blanket, believe you me. So really, what I'm saying is, cultivate, an environment that works for you, and see how you flourish with in that routine of journaling, and when you have that right mindset and take it seriously, because it should not be a chore that you dread. It's actually an activity that helps with your overall well-being, and that is something that you have to take seriously. You can't take for granted, because you never know, and that just doing that activity, even if it's only 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, and that can actually maybe save you from getting yourself that low in your mental state of mind, where you could end up in a real bad place, and that is something you do not want. That's something you want to avoid. So just by journaling, it helps with your self-regulation of your psychological and in some cases physical well-being. To conclude everything that I have said up to this point, journaling is far more than putting pen to paper. It is a life-changing practice of emotional healing, clarity, and personal empowerment, especially for those on the autistic spectrum. For many autistic people, journaling provides a safe and structured outlet to process their complex emotions, reduce anxiety levels, and strengthen their self-awareness. Journaling has historically been rooted in ancient civilizations and spiritual disciplines, but it has evolved into a therapeutic tool that is backed by modern psychology and neuroscience, which many studies have shown that just 15 minutes of expressive writing a day can significantly improve one's mental well-being and cognitive thinking. For autistic people, journaling has become a bridge between the inner world and the outer experiences that is beyond an autistic person's control. It enhances their emotional regulation by offering a non-judgmental space to explore their feelings, track their sensory triggers that can cause their onset of anxiety, and reflect on the social interactions they have had without pressure from other people. Whether it's managing their consecutive functioning challenges, preparing for social communication with others, or developing creative self-expression, journaling allows autistic people to structure their thoughts in ways that make sense to them, not necessarily to others. It is also a grounding habit, one that can foster mindfulness, strengthen their neurodiverse identity, and provides a sense of control that in a often chaotic and overwhelming neurotypical world. The key to successful journaling is to making it uniquely yours. Whether you prefer writing in a leather-bound notebook or notepad or typing on an electronic device, what matters the most is the consistency, comfort, and intention that an autistic person puts into journaling, and ensuring that it benefits them truly, and in terms of their development and the direction of where they want to go, and that in the future. Remember, you don't have to write perfectly. You only need to write honestly and to ensure that it reflects how you truly feel. Your story, your emotions, your growth, it all matters. And journaling is just not only recording your life, it's about reclaiming it and honouring it well, and ensuring that you live your life and act purposefully and live it to the best of your abilities. If you like this episode, please feel free to subscribe to the Aspergian Journal on YouTube, and also subscribing to the newsletter on Substack, where your support and that will help massively, and to the Aspergian Journal and at achieving its overall mission of promoting autism advocacy through creative empowerment and inspiration. As always, thank you.